Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Okay, now I can see everybody. Hello, everybody. It's so nice to see you all, to be here with you. Steeven and I are really thrilled to host this conversation and to offer some things that have been gifts given to us by the collective. I would like to start quickly by offering the land acknowledgement that Vanessa was asked to give by Indigenous people that she is connected to and work with in Brazil. And it's important to add that Molly's land acknowledgement of the peoples and place that she resides in is really important to do. And for all of us, and that we all have the Indigenous lands that we are on and that we are connected to in our names, and that this is an additional one, and that is offered and has spoken to me personally, which is why I want to share it with all of you. So it's a four-part acknowledgement. The first is to acknowledge the land as a living entity, not as a property or a resource. The second is to acknowledge our ancestors, those who have been here and those who have yet to come, and what has that they have allowed us to be here. Third is to acknowledge that we're all together and to thank those who have brought us together, which I think is Molly and the Sisters of Earth generally. And for each of you, to thank each of you for being here. And lastly is to acknowledge all of our relations, acknowledge that we are all kin, that we are kin with humans and non-humans and surrounded by that. So I'd like to start with that. And that is really a direct connection to our work with the collective, which Steeven and I have been sinking into, I guess would be a good way, diving deep into for some time now, and to acknowledge that that work is connected with the Indigenous peoples in Canada, Peru, Mexico, and Brazil, and that's what we come and bring to offer. Steeven?
And also to acknowledge the many knowledge keepers and elders and the many people with wisdom that we encountered along the way that also are here with us in a way in what we're going to share today. So we also like to remind people that some of those teachings come from experiences of oppression, and may we welcome them with openness and healthy skepticism while we work together toward interrupting those cycles of harm as they show up in ourselves and our communities. So maybe you can put the next one. And as said, we wanted also to present ourselves a bit more today, and the way we connected with the collective. Where to start this story of how we connected? Well, this image is, I think, one of the first things that came up from this connection. Jocelyn and I have been sitting with the work of the collective for I think at least 2 years now since we met Vanessa. And Jocelyn and I both work in the field of aging. So I do that in Quebec and her in Halifax. And Jocelyn and I kept connected through those topics, but also our interest into looking towards decolonial futures. And I think this was a process of really learning in relationship, of Jocelyn and I being on this path together, of writing to each other every day about what we're learning and what we're going through and how this relates to the work and how this relates to what we're learning about ourselves and our colonial ways of being. So yeah, it's a really undefinable story in a way. There's hardly a beginning and an end to it. But
there's definitely no end to it. We're in the middle of it, for sure. For sure. Yeah, so when the theme of cartographies came up for this session, and Vanessa had invited us after coming to Nova Scotia in January to really dive into the work and think about what kinds of cartographies might be useful for our work, invited us to be working on cartographies of aging, which we have done and have shared on the collective's website. We began that work, though, right as COVID started, and this was one of the very first cartographies that came up, the mountain with the rupture. We were also very moved and influenced by the work of Arundhati Roy and the article she wrote and the webinar that she did at the very beginning of the pandemic, looking at the pandemic being a portal, and us to really look at what is the baggage that we might be carrying through, and how can we leave that baggage behind. And this particular quote was speaking to how we are, the focus around early days in the pandemic was like, can we stitch it all back together, but not recognizing the rupture that has happened. And so this was really one of our first forays into cartographies, and really felt like this would be a great introduction to this session here. And we're hoping in future sessions that we'd be able to share more of the cartographies that we worked on related to aging as well.
Yes. And we will put up an invitation at the end of the session around how this could come to peace or come into this space.
Yeah. And so we wanted to just kind of quickly touch on the things that we touched on last time in the session as an invitation, reminding you that as you engage in the work, recognize that they're tools for learning, and that they're not meant to be a really comprehensive view of reality, but are used to really start conversations and draw our attention to things that we often actively avoid. And that we're here to expand our curiosities about the things that we avoid, and so that we can continue to be in relationship to each other and learn together. As Molly said, we're on this journey together. I think the thing that I have likened it to recently with some other sessions I've been in is that I feel really privileged to walk the road with people who are sometimes 5 steps ahead of me and sometimes 5 steps behind me, and that I can like see where I am and really learn and teach at the same time. And I feel like this is what this kind of relationship is really bringing to us.
Yeah, and those tools, as it was put, offer us a space to hold relationship while we look at art things, while we look at violences and stuff that would usually bring us to a reactive space. But how can we slow those reactions and orient ourselves in a different way? So they're also a reminder of the last time we spoke about positive education in the Western world, when it's about getting more information to solve things, and seeing problem as a lack of information. Whether in this way of composting, we're more inviting people to peel the layers and engage in negative education, and really see what is behind those reactions, and how they come or not from a colonial ways of being, and offering us the space to bring a pause to it and develop a stamina to orient different from that. And then we're gonna still use the bus. I think you've been practicing with the bus in your other sessions. So as Molly put out at the beginning, there's a kind of not a recipe, but there's a kind of a way of working that we use with the collective. So there's always a kind of stimulus, so something that is put in the center of the space to help us. So those cartographies are used for that, to help us see, how Jocelyn said, where we're calibrated toward some things and away from others. And using the bus to do that, and really sitting with our complexities. So we wanted to bring back the bus just before we go and engage with this other stimulus. And after that, we're gonna have, the practice session is gonna be another bus check-in. So really taking time to dive together and let us sink deeper slowly into what this story that Jocelyn's gonna tell us brings inside you. And so yeah, I think I'm done here, and I'm gonna let Jocelyn take us further.
Molly, I'm just checking in. Are you recording? Because I don't see recording happening.
I see
and
it.
I know you wanted to record. Okay, I don't know what's going on with my screen then. It must be because I'm sharing screen. Okay, I'm moving to the next slide. Just wanted to make sure. So I think Molly shared with you all the link to the tree. The work invites us to look at the multiple layers of knowing and seeing the world, and really unpacks the ways that modernity and colonialism has shaped all of those different layers of connection and experiencing knowledge and our ways of knowing. And I know Molly wanted to share a little bit more about the tree as well.
Thank you. You know, I assigned the tree as reading, and doesn't necessarily mean that we had to, you know, have a whole session around it. And I think understanding that the resources are really ancillary, or, you know, if you feel like reading and doing more work, there it is. I've curated it for your use. But the reason I like the tree was because it images and narrates a way of looking at how we acquire knowledge, how we learn, how we acquire knowledge. And I'm particularly inspired by this quote from it, because it very much ties into why I'm involved in this course, and I have a sense that it's why you are involved in this course as well. And quote, "This layer of critique emphasizes the pedagogical need to expand our existing sensibilities and constellations of knowledge, relationality, and affect, in order to prepare us with the stamina and strength to face the difficulties of unlearning our investments in a dying system, and of learning the joys of walking alongside one another rather than in front or behind, in order to pluralize possibilities for coexistence in a fragile planet." So a lot of words to unpack, very long sentence. I read these 3, 4, 5 times, truthfully. I think it'll be probably easier for you guys, but there's so much there, and there's so much depth and importance. And yes, we want to live in coexistence on a fragile planet in a mutual, reciprocal, beautiful, caring, and loving relationship. And this is why we're here, I think. That's my projection, but that is my sense of why we're here. Thank you. Thanks, Jocelyn.
Thank you, Molly. And flowing from that, you know, as Steeven and Molly have both said, like part of this pattern of our work together is offering a stimulus, and what we will be offering today is a story that was originally shared by an Indigenous elder, John Crier, Cree elder from Alberta. And was offered back in 2015 and became very important in some work that Kasia Hennique was doing on knowledge keeping and Indigenous education. And so it's important to recognize that, and that part of that project was about how Indigenous education is fundamentally seen as being about preparing people from the day that they're born to become good elders and good ancestors for all relations. The story has just recently been acknowledged to be able to be shared more broadly. Back in 2015, there was permission given for it to travel with the collective and the work with Indigenous communities across North and South America, which was done. And now I think it's becoming even more broadly offered, which is why we can offer it to you today. And before I start on that, I just wanted to say some acknowledgements about Indigenous storytelling, that stories are living entities that can land in our hearts if we allow them, and that dance with us, that the dance can be short or it could be long, that it can last a whole lifetime. That in the dance, different layers of meaning and sensefulness are revealed gradually and slowly over time, over decades even. That insights deepen on available space that we have within us, and that if there's too much clutter, that often we can't have much space for the stories to move and dance and reveal new insights. So often we need to clear space for that to happen. It's also important to acknowledge that some Indigenous stories carry sacred knowledge, and that those only can be revealed in specific Indigenous communities with specific Indigenous peoples, that those stories need to be protected and stay in the communities that they reside, but that there are some of these stories that are meant to be traveling stories, to go to different places, to dance with different people, to learn new moves, and to travel in different ways, and that this is one of those stories. And that because this story traveled, and when it's come back now, and the connection between Vanessa and John Crier has brought forward what we're going to share with you today, and it has learned new moves, and those moves, we can't really tell what were the original and what were the new, that it has taken on a life of its own. And so I really look forward to dancing with this story with all of you. And I am definitely referring to the notes here because I want to do justice to this story and make sure that I cover off the things that need to be covered. So the Four Mountains story is a story about the stages of life. Each mountain represents a stage of life that human beings go through. There's a baby mountain, a warrior mountain, a hunter-provider mountain, and an elder mountain. And if all is in balance, the land, the ancestors, and all relations will support people moving from mountain to mountain. Humans do not own their time or their life. It is a more powerful force, which many Indigenous people call the Great Spirit or the Creator, who decides the length of time that we travel through life and the visions that we receive for what and how we are meant to contribute. Some people are meant to travel only so far in the mountains. They may complete their journey early for different reasons. Sometimes with babies, for example, the time is not right for them to stay, but they still come to visit families for a bit as a gift. Sometimes people get lost or find a path in mountains that leads to a dead end. Sometimes people individually or collectively just get stuck in one mountain without the teachings they need to proceed. When this happens, the guidance of elders is necessary to help people find the path and connect to the visions and move in a healthier way again. So as I move through these, I'll just remind you to pay attention to what's going on in your bus. We'll give you some time to reflect at the end, and Steeven and I will walk you through a bus check-in at the end. So the first mountain is the baby mountain. If everything is in balance, as you come to the world as a baby, you are received at the base of this mountain with unconditional regard and respect for your existence in the arms of our parents, elders, and communities. Your first rite of passage is your first breath. You are carried up this mountain in a bundle that strengthens the connection between your baby body and the collective bodies around you of your extended family. Wise and healthy grandparents, grand uncles, grand aunties have a huge role to play in this mountain. And when they are not there, sometimes babies cannot make it to the top. Once you reach the top of this mountain, you start to walk on your own. You walk down the other side of this mountain on your own with your hand being held. Your focus shifts to learning your feet being on the ground, on the land. Your hand is held by those other relations as you come down the mountain, learning how to feel and to relate to the ground beneath your feet and how to thread your path carefully with respect and reverence for the land that will hold you for the rest of your journey. Learning that you are part of creation and cared for and guided by people, the land, the ancestors, and relations makes you feel in your bones that your life has intrinsic value. Next, the second mountain is the warrior mountain. Now that you can walk on your own, the rite of passage in this mountain is to learn to set your own boundaries and to encounter your own vision and place in the world, rather than have your parents or others define it for you. This is the mountain where you find your unique gifts, the unique medicines you bring, and that eventually you will learn to put these to use as they are needed. When society is in turmoil, it is these young people starting to climb the mountain who feel the consequences the most because they have not yet established boundaries. They have unbounded energy, and since they are seeking and learning about self-rule, they tend to push back against guidance and advice. As young people look for their path on their own, they sometimes end in the wrong path when guidance is not available. In this mountain, you also need to meet and wrestle with your shadows. On the way up, it is like going into a very thick forest in the dark, in the middle of the night, with the half moon and the stars barely illuminating the way. The trees can see your spirit. They know who you are, but they can't tell you anything directly. You are still too self-absorbed to listen. You need to shake you out of this self-absorption to communicate with you. As you climb up, you are really impatient. It feels as if you can only be well if you find answers, if you have certainty. But the role of the land as your teacher is to introduce you to the mystery of your existence. It can give you directions, usually in the form of visions or songs, but it won't give you final answer for everything you are seeking at this point. The land will always give you what you need to take the next small step, to do the next right thing, to keep moving in a good way as learning and your story gradually unfold. This part of the mountain path can be frustrating because your body has energy to run, but the ground is uneven, requiring you to walk slowly. Those going up this mountain often spend a lot of time fighting the shadows of the trees. There are also many distractions on the way up, different path options, many different voices and choices pointing in different directions. It is like trying to find your medicine, your gift, as a needle in a haystack. Many fears and insecurities show up in this process. Fear of not being worthy, fear of not finding the right answer, fear of missing out, fear of humiliation, rejection, abandonment, fear of loss, pain, and death, fear of making wrong choices, fear that life may not be worth living, fear that your life is a mistake. In order to forget these fears, many young people build an image of themselves that prevents others from seeing what is really going on. Some young people focus on building an image that they are strong, invincible, and never wrong. Others want to be seen as friendly, caring, reliable. Some want to be seen as rebellious, transgressive, defiant. But an image is just an image. The larger gap between how you want to be seen and the many things that are actually going on within, the harder the path feels for you, the higher chances of making wrong choices. This part of the mountain path is treacherous because you could just be living in the moment, walking in circles without direction for the longest time. It is the job of families and elders to support you and guide you, but sometimes they can't show up because they are lost themselves. And it could be that they got lost in the same mountain, never had an opportunity to find the path again. Especially nowadays, many people get trapped in this mountain, and we lose too many of them. Right around the corner from that difficult path, there is a clearing, but you can only see it when you are ready, when you are already exhausted from fighting with your shadows and the shadows of the trees. It is this clearing you can rest, you can fast, you can breathe, you can observe, you can hear your heartbeat synchronize with the heartbeat of the earth. If you manage to quiet your spirit and become humble before the land, you may be contacted by the spirits that have known and observed you, the spirits who know what you need, the step that you need to take next, and the seedlings of gifts and medicines that you have inside of you. From that point of contact on, your medicines start to grow and to work through you, and at least half of the fears and insecurities disappear. On the way down this mountain, you develop familiarity and closeness with your gifts, with your medicines. You learn as much as possible about them. This feels really good in a surprising way. The good feeling is generally different than you might have expected or had been looking for on your way up this mountain. Next, the mountain is the provider mountain or the hunter mountain. This is the third mountain. The rite of passage of this mountain is about seeing a much bigger picture, about seeing more than the picture is showing you as well, into the past and into the future. It is about learning to use your medicines and your gifts to contribute towards the well-being of your family, of your community, of the land, and of all relations. Now that you have learned to establish boundaries and that you are starting to trust your own gifts, you need to learn how to offer them in a good way to your community. You need to learn when, how, and how much to offer. When these medicines are healing and when they can turn into a poison, and of how to integrate them with other medicines and gifts of other relations. This looks simple, but it's actually a period full of challenges. You will make many mistakes before you learn to work well with your own medicines and gifts. and before you learn to integrate them with the medicines and gifts of others. This is a very busy and humbling period of deep learning about discernment. For example, some people may notice that you have a good medicine. They may come to you to ask for and sometimes demand some, but what you have may not be the medicine that they need, and you will need to know how to respond to this situation. In this mountain, you are learning to be confident and humble, to be autonomous and accountable, to be generous, and to not allow your generosity to be exploited, to take things seriously and to laugh at yourself, to learn quickly from your mistakes and to make new mistakes, only new mistakes, as you move to the next learning. To apologize for the suffering that you have caused, to not increase other people's labor unnecessarily, to be accountable to the human and non-human lives that sacrifice themselves to keep you alive. You learn to gift your gifts. A gift is only a gift when it is gifted. It cannot be sold. A gifted gift moves to the heart of those who receive it to a place of reciprocity, but the reciprocity may not be directly back to you. You learn to trust that as long as you are gifting your gifts and using your medicine in a good way, the land and the spirits will take care of your needs too. Sometimes you need a day job to sustain your family while you do the work with your gifts and medicines in parallel. It is important to have a clear idea of the difference between what is a job and what is the work that needs to be done. There are also shadows in this mountain that you need to wrestle with. You may be tempted to use your gifts in destructive ways. You need to observe yourself and what is happening around you. If there is imbalance, you can turn from a hunter into predator, who takes more than the fair share from the land and who exploits the weaknesses of other beings, taking advantage of them. This happens when there are gaps in the teachings of the previous mountain. That is why it is important to be very early. That is why it is important that very early you learn what it means to be a helper, to put your body, your gifts, and your intellect into service of greater good of the land and the community. Otherwise, you can use your life force to destroy relations and to destroy yourself. When these imbalances happen, there is a natural law that makes you pay the price, sometimes with your life. Be really careful here. Once you can apply the teachings of this mountain within your own community, you are ready to learn to integrate your medicines and gifts into a much wider ecology on the way down the hunter-provider mountain. This is where you may be ready to mentor others who have similar medicines or gifts to your own, so that they don't repeat the mistakes that you made. As you see your medicines from a different perspective, you really notice how large the world is and how small you are. And instead of feeling insignificant, you feel the opposite because you see the miracle and the beauty in small things, including yourself. You realize how much you don't know and how much you can't know. It is all a mystery, but you are no longer afraid of having to have the answers. Shadows no longer scare you and pain no longer haunts you. You have learned to hold the hand of pain and to accept the shadows are everywhere where there is also light. You can see the beautiful and the ugly, the good and the bad, the broken and the scarred, and bear witness. You develop more reverence for the land, the planet that holds it all together. You start to hear the songs that move everything, the seasons, the waters, the winds, the clouds, the plants, ourselves, other animals, the cycles of life, death, and renewal. You notice the rhythms and the movements that transform everything around you. The sky and the stars speak with you differently. You experience time differently. Although you have already been told that everything is interconnected and you have seen glimpses of it, this time is not just a glimpse. You can't turn it off. You are ready for the Elder Mountain, but you will say that you don't feel ready for that yet, which could be one of the signs that you are. The fourth mountain, the Elder Mountain, is located behind the three mountains. The rite of passage here is to help others with their rites of passage, to develop further your hindsight, insight, foresight, and to become a good guide, to help other people find their own direction according to the purpose of the mountain they are in. Since there is no book with an encyclopedia of directions for people, you need to learn to support people who need help by meeting them where they are at. In order to reach the Elder Mountain, which is near the Baby Mountain, you will need to go around all three mountains and visit the places where you shifted from one mountain to the next. There you will encounter people who need your guidance to find the path where they change to a different mountain. You will pass down your own experience of climbing, especially what you have learned from the mistakes you have made as you were finding your own direction and purpose. Like the trees in the Warrior Mountain, you cannot tell people directly what their purpose or direction should be. This is between them and the Great Spirit, and they need to find it for themselves through their connection to the land and with all relations. This is important. Otherwise, they will not have the energy and the confidence to keep moving. As an elder, you will have to collaborate with land and create experiences with land itself, create experiences where the land itself can teach, where you are just holding and protecting the space for those teachings. As you walk to the Elder Mountain, you will meet warriors that are ready to become hunters, providers. You will meet children who are ready to become warriors, and then you will arrive at the place where the Baby Mountain meets the Elder Mountain. In the Baby Mountain, you will help welcome new life to your community and help carry this life to the top of the first mountain. Elders are particularly suited to carrying the babies because unlike warriors, they have patience. And unlike hunters, providers, they have time. Both babies and elders are close to the ancestors and the source of life beyond form. Elders also have the wisdom of hindsight to protect the babies, avoiding the parts of the path that are dangerous for young ones. In this mountain, no one reaches the top still carrying their body. Only your spirit reaches the top. At some point along this mountain's path, you will have to shed your body. When the day of shedding the body comes, you are ready to pass away to the place of the ancestors. You are grateful for what you have been taught in this body. You have settled what needed to be settled. You have prepared your family. You have passed down your stories and your songs. The people you have mentored have become mentors themselves. You have helped people to switch mountains. You are at peace with the enormity, timelessness, and incessant movement of the land. You go with empty hands. You leave everything behind. You leave no footprints. You become an ancestor, and you meet those who have come before and those who are yet to come, and all the invisible relations, both human and non-human, who accompanied you in the path, in your path in the Four Mountains. When you shed your body, you integrate all experiences you have had in your life. Your spirit becomes one with the mystery of creation.
Thank you, Jocelyn, for this marvelous reading. Before we get into the, the bus check-in, I will offer some questions, and we're going to take some minutes to let you sink in what is sinking in and what is happening in your bus, and let you time to slow down and to look at what is happening, and to turn your senses to what is happening to your body and what has been happening in your body while you were listening to this story. What are the flashes about your life that came up while you were listening? And did those flashes stayed, or did they evaporated? And why did they evaporated? Maybe it's not time for you to sit with them, but I'll invite you to remind about them for when it's time to sit with them. Also, who visited you while you were listening to this story? Have you seen elders or guides or ancestors or babies even that visited your complex inner self while listening to this story? And did they have messages for you? And were you able to get a glimpse of those messages? And what are the different stages of life that I feel that I'm on at the same time? What are the different mountains that you feel you're on? So I'm gonna let you in silence for a minute, and then I'm gonna invite you to share what's happening on your bus with some further instructions.
Did you want me to put a timer on, Steeven?
No, that's good.
Okay.
I have it. Thank you.
Perfect.
So, the way we're going to share today, I'm going to call names in the order that I have on with the list. So a quick reminder of the bus check-in. So there's different ways to share. So a reminder also that it's not about sharing opinions or getting into conversations or debate, but really if you have something to share, that you share something that you feel is valuable for the group and that we're all gonna learn from. So the options are to say that your bus is okay, that the passengers are fine and it's still moving on. My bus is still processing, so maybe things are moving, but you still don't know what to share from them, and it's okay. As the story said, it might take a lifetime to listen to those voices. And finally, if there is something up on your bus. So if there is something up on your bus, that means that you have an insight, aha, something useful for the group to share. So not what has happened on your bus, but what you are learning from what is happening on your bus. So we all connect to this story differently. So
just Molly, did you want to keep recording this part, or did you want to end recording?
I'll end recording.